So as we all know, Sonic was a massive success for Sega back in the 90s. So in order to make even more money, various spin-offs were made back in the day. Everything from racing games, puzzle games, fighting games, and even other platformers. So I figured why not briefly cover all of these little side projects. But just so you know, I already did a video covering some of the 8-bit platformers along with Pocket Adventure in a separate video, so I won't be discussing those here. Oh, and one other thing. Think of this video as a series of first impressions of these games. I didn't feel the need to thoroughly review all of these games since I probably would have gotten very bored very fast. But with that out of the way, let's get started. So in the early 90s, Sega released this wacky little modem for the Mega Drive, but only in Japan. It used dial-up internet and was pay to play. While definitely far ahead of its time, the accessory didn't last very long, but it did give us the very first Sonic spin-off, Sonic Eraser. And it's beyond unremarkable. It's a very simple, bare-bones falling block puzzle game with some horrendous music. Now, this game isn't inherently bad per se, but it's one of those things that has no value to it. You just match the blocks and keep doing that until you win. That's it. There's no pizzazz to it either, unlike Tetris for example. Although these animations where Sonic goes and furiously punches the other Sonic are pretty damn funny to me. It's sorta uncanny. I mean, I guess for the time this would have been a cool novelty, but now it's pretty meh. Although we can all still laugh at this music. Sega used to be pretty big into arcade machines back in their heyday. They've made tons of great cabinets over the years. In fact, I'm pretty sure I ran across a Monaco GP machine up in Colorado once, and it was awesome. There were also a few Sonic arcade machines that were made in the 90s, but they've since become pretty rare. There was Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car, where you controlled the Hedgehog in a police car and drive around. Along with that, they even made something called SegaSonic Popcorn Shop. It was this machine where you played a little mini game with a crank in order to make your popcorn. And while these games are pretty neat, the crown jewel was SegaSonic the Hedgehog, released in 1993. Although I've never had any means of playing this game, but luckily I know someone who has. Take it away, Amiiben.
Hello there, it's Amiiben. I drove 6 hours to roll a ball, and let me tell you, it was worth it. The controls in this game are insanely good. Movement is super fluid and it feels like you have complete control over your character. This just can't be replicated at home. Try as they might, Sega attempted to bring this to consoles 3 times but failed. The 32X, GameCube, and Switch can't handle Mighty the Armadillo. This game runs on Sega System 32 arcade hardware, making for some incredible sprite animations. The whole game has this Looney Tunes vibe with its presentation, and you gotta love that. The levels here are designed great, but you can certainly tell they wanted to eat up your quarters. In the later half of the game, some traps can take away half your health bar. However, at the arcade I played it at, the machine was set to free play and this wasn't an issue. SegaSonic is the definition of a hidden gem. Hardly anyone can experience it because it's stuck in the arcades and has very few cabinets out there. If you try to play it in MAME, it's just not the same. Even if you have a USB trackball, you will not get the same experience. If you ever come across it, for sure sit down and play a game. It'll only take 20 minutes to run through the whole thing, but it is a blast from start to finish. If you want to see a full in-depth review of this game, be sure to check out my video on it. I go to the world's largest arcade and talk about everything there is to know about SegaSonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, it's a shame this game is so inaccessible these days. It seems like a ton of fun. Hopefully one day I'll have the privilege of playing this game the way God intended. So back in the 90s, I guess the Puyo Puyo series was just a little too kawaii anime for us Americans. So what certain companies would do is just reskin these games into more recognizable IPs, like in Kirby's Avalanche, and our game in question, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. And hey, for what it is, it's pretty cool. Despite being based off the Adventures of Sonic cartoon, it has a good bit of personality. The characters you battle are pretty expressive and I like that about it. Other than that, it's your standard Puyo Puyo affair, so of course it's fun. Stacking and matching slimes is always a good time. It's definitely one of the better puzzle franchises out there, and Mean Bean Machine is another good one for sure. So if you love Puyo Puyo and Sonic, then this is a good time. The only problem is that I suck. Yeah. In order to have a Sonic game released for Christmas 1993, Sega had this game made, and I don't like it. I mean, I like the concept of it. Casino Night is one of the best zones in Sonic 2, no doubt, so a Pinball Sonic game makes too much sense. But I think they just kind of botched it. While I love the idea of having these different sections to the levels and even adding in dashes of exploration to the mix, it falls flat for me. These levels are just really annoying and cumbersome to play. I find a lot of the hazards to be pretty obnoxious more than anything. Like, I get that this is pinball and that you're supposed to get smacked around, but when getting smacked around leads to losing a ton of progress you've made in a level, yeah, I don't really care for it. And exploring levels while also trying to play pinball just doesn't really work, in my opinion. I just really wish this was a more standard pinball game that's just one screen, you know? I get that Spinball has its fans, but I just don't get much out of this one. However, it's certainly more interesting than a lot of other pinball games I've played. I'll give it that for sure. Here we have Sonic Drift 1 and 2, some of the first racing games in the franchise. I didn't expect much with these games, and while they're not great, I found them to be more enjoyable than I thought. It's funny, since I remember having played Drift 2 on the Gems collection and hating it back in the day. But this time around I enjoyed myself for the most part. You basically have to pay attention to signs in front of you and drift in a certain direction. I like that they kept things very simple, and nothing ridiculous is ever going on, which is good. These are Game Gear games after all, they probably shouldn't have been trying too hard anyway. Drift 2 adds some extra bells and whistles though, such as more characters and some extra stage hazards and such, but I honestly prefer the more stripped back gameplay of Drift 1. Now, are these games worth going out of your way to play? Not really. All things considered, they're incredibly dated and bland, but for what they are, it's not too bad. In 1994, Sega made this pretty ridiculous add-on for the Genesis called the 32X, but unfortunately for them, it was a huge failure. Yeah, no one really cared about this thing at all. But there was in fact a Sonic game for it called Knuckles Chaotix. This game has always been pretty elusive to me. I've known of it for years and I've seen plenty of gameplay of it, but I've never played it until now. But now that I have, I definitely see why this game isn't looked back on too fondly. Yeah, this game is not very good, but it kind of makes me sad that it sucks. Let me explain. This game features a pretty cool cast of characters. Knuckles is of course the star of the show, Mighty makes a comeback from SegaSonic, and we get several new characters that would eventually make up Team Chaotix, that being Vector, Charmy, and my personal favorite, Espio. It's a pretty cool cast of characters, and to see them have their own game is pretty sweet. Knuckles Chaotix also looks pretty great graphically speaking. It reminds me a lot of Sonic CD with how colorful and over the top it is. You could definitely tell they were trying to show off what the 32X could do. So that's all well and good, but now we reach the game's core problem, the ring tether. This is the signature gimmick of Knuckles Chaotix, and it actually originated in a prototype called Sonic Crackers. Basically, you control one character and drag another character around while holding onto a ring. Now let me put this into perspective. This game would probably be pretty decent if this was removed, cause like things that require zero thought in normal Sonic games can be a huge chore here. Spin dashing, jumping, and simple platforming are very annoying because you have this other loser dragging you around all the time. And speaking of the spin dash, it was nerfed beyond belief in this game. Instead, you're supposed to do this dumb thing where the other character stands in place and you launch off of them like a slingshot, and even this hardly works. I know you've probably heard people complain about these exact same things before, but it's for a reason. Like I said, this would be a perfectly fine game if this ring tethering wasn't here, and it's a real shame since most other aspects of this game aren't too bad. Oh well, at least Sonic Team kept most of these characters alive when Sonic Heroes rolled around. Too bad Mighty got the short end of the stick though. So this is the first of two titles on the Game Gear that star Tails. But unfortunately Skypatrol is pretty bad. I mean, it's a good idea on paper, flying around as Tails while dodging obstacles and defeating enemies sounds like fun. But the developers just had to mess it up. It is so easy to die in this game, it's ridiculous. The small screen size and the auto-scrolling can make it harder to react to stuff, Not only that, but sometimes you'll end up on a dead end and die since guess what? If you even brush up against a wall, you're dead. Now none of this would really be much of a problem except they decided to add salt to the wound by making you die in one hit. This just makes everything more annoying than need be. Otherwise this game really wouldn't be that hard. Definitely one of the worst games in this video. Next. Now, this one is a slower paced, explorative 2D platformer. You explore levels as Tails while finding new gadgets, blowing up enemies, and fighting bosses. And it's not too bad. In fact, I like it quite a bit. The level design isn't overly confusing, and the different weapons and tools Tails can use are pretty cool. I wish we got to see Tails use these kinds of gadgets in other games. I also really like a lot of the enemy designs here, especially these bird dudes. And using bombs to take them out is really fun. Tails Adventure is definitely one of the better Game Gear Sonic titles, and while it won't blow your mind, there's definitely some merit behind it because of its uniqueness. I was expecting little to nothing with Sonic Labyrinth since for the longest time I knew it as this dumb game where, get this, Sonic is slow. Oh my god. So naturally I avoided this game my whole life. Until now, of course. And well, it's not horrible, but it's nowhere near good. The way I would describe this game is a shittier version of 3D Blast. You traverse these isometric levels looking for 3 keys. That's it. These levels are just kinda boring, really. Wander around, find a key, wash, rinse, repeat. But let's address the elephant in the room. Sonic's speed, or lack thereof, I suppose. You see, Robotnik replaced Sonic's shoes with speed down boots, which is why he's so slow. And yes, that is the actual plot. So yeah, Sonic is abysmally slow in this game. In fact, he's so slow to the point where you can hardly play the game properly. So instead, you're basically forced to spin dash everywhere, which can be a bit cumbersome. Even if they did away with the slow speed, this game still wouldn't be anything special. Spin dashing around looking for keys just isn't very fun. Although I still don't think it's the worst Sonic Game Gear game. Tails Skypatrol is just way worse. Here we have another arcade game, Sonic the Fighters. But this time I can actually play it since it was included on the Gems collection for GameCube. And it's not bad, although there isn't much to it. This is definitely the most piss-easy fighting game I've ever played. It's really short, the CPUs are pretty dumb, and you can for sure beat this game by just button mashing. I would know, because that's what I did. Like, once you knock them on the floor, you can just keep wailing on them when they get up. It's even easier when they run out of barriers. And while this does get rid of any and all challenge, I think this game has enough personality that it makes up for those things. I love the absurd amount of squash and stretch in the animations. It's so much fun watching these characters get smacked around all over the place. And speaking of characters, this game's roster is pretty interesting. Sure, you have your mainstays, but then you have 2 characters that ended up being neglected until Sonic Mania, those being Bean and Bark. Do they have the best character designs on the planet? No, but it would have been nice to see them make some cameos throughout the years. Yeah, overall there isn't much to this game, but it's a fun romp nonetheless. And hey, this is an arcade game after all, so when taking that into consideration, it's kinda great. Like, I would love to play an actual cabinet while hanging out with some friends at an arcade. That'd be a great time, but unfortunately it's pretty uncommon, just like the other arcade games mentioned earlier in this video. But hey, they're out there, so who knows, and maybe I'll come across one someday. You know, I really wasn't expecting much with this game, but it ended up becoming somewhat of a pleasant surprise. I can confidently say that I like Sonic 3D Blast, even if it isn't your typical Sonic experience. Instead of getting to a goal, you instead go around these isometric levels, destroying enemies and collecting the flickies that come out of them. And once you have enough, you take them over to these rings and you can advance to the next section. At first I wasn't too huge on this, but once I got into the groove of it, I began to enjoy it. It's a solid gameplay loop with decent pacing. The level design and structure isn't too bad either, aside from the occasional poor hazard placement here and there. The enemies are easy to find and the levels feel pretty dense. Although this game isn't really something everyone is going to enjoy. For one, the controls are pretty rough. Sonic is very, very slippery, making precise platforming nearly impossible. but luckily these levels don't have too much of that. I personally got used to the controls, but I do recommend playing with an analog stick if you can. It just makes more sense that way. One cool thing I should also mention is the Sega Saturn version. This is for sure the definitive way to play this game. It looks a million times better for one, and the soundtrack is excellent, especially the title theme. It's phenomenal. But unfortunately Saturn emulation sucks balls and I couldn't move diagonally, but I'm sure it plays well on real hardware with one of those 3D control pads. Again, I do not think this game is something everyone will enjoy at all, but I'd say it's worth a shot regardless. So that's pretty much it. Well, almost. There were a handful of Sonic edutainment games released throughout the 90s. Most were on Sega Pico, but then there was the infamous Sonic Schoolhouse on PC. I didn't bother trying to emulate any of these, so I'm just going to tell you to watch Peter Netter's video on them since it's great.
Yay!
I'd say overall most of these spin-offs are pretty lame, but at least there were some surprises like 3D Blast and Tails Adventures thrown in there. Honestly, I think Sega pumped out too many of these things. It'd be one thing if they were all good, but they're not. Especially these damn Game Gear games, they feel so worthless almost. It's probably kinda harsh, but most of these don't have much going for them, sadly. Thankfully they toned down with spin-offs in the 2000s, but that's a video for another day. Well, now that that's all done and over with, I can finally spend some quality time with my girlfriend. So how was your day? Oh, excuse me 1 second. Hello?
Rowe, I think you're forgetting something.
What are you talking about?
Oh, you know, the game.
What game?
The game.
Oh, that. Fine. Well, it looks like garbage. The camera is way too zoomed in to where I can't make out much of the level, and the level design itself is nothing to write home about. Nothing sticks out at all. It just feels like wandering around looking for the goal instead of, well, a level. Oh, and the controls suck too. Yeah, there's really nothing of note with Sonic Blast, just like all these other f***ing Game Gear games. There. You happy now?
No.
Give me my smokes!
Smoking's bad for you, you know.
No, it's not. Try it.
Whoa, little bro. That smoke'll make you choke.
It doesn't make me...
Smoking is for dumbbots. It's bad for your health, and it stains your teeth. So don't be a fool. Smoking isn't cool.